on and talk a little bit about hardiness, because it's got right up my nose in recent times for various reasons. So your hands get so soft in the winter, you know. If you visit a garden centre or nursery or whatever, and you see a plant that takes your fancy, what do you say to yourself? Do you first of all say, will it grow in my garden? And if it will grow in my garden, will it need to be indoors all the time or outdoors all the time? I don't think people go through any kind of process to see one plant and say, oh, I fancy that. Impulse buy, isn't it? And it could be something that's going to cost you 15 or 20 pounds. And if you don't do your homework, you could be buying something nowadays that's really quite inappropriate. The winters 09, 10 and 10, 11 sort of brought us up with a bit of a shock at the number of things that died off. People were talking about mulberry trees did, you know, and all this stuff. Well, when I was a learning student and I was working in the west of Scotland, which is regarded as mild, people didn't grow bay trees in their garden. Rich people had bay trees in pots in the conservatory. But people didn't grow them outside the garden, and gradually, as they become available in garden centres all around the country, people say, oh, fancy that, and you get a series of mild winters and all the rest of it, and the bay trees are okay. So I wanted to focus on this business of, just because it's in your local garden centre, doesn't mean to say that it's suitable for your garden. And the hardiness thing is really quite crucial. They do say that a walk around a well-stocked Scottish garden is like a world tour. And it's a fact. I mean, this is why we'll refer to the map in a minute. But these winters were really bad. We've become far too blasé about what can happen. Are there any guidelines to help gardens? Do people do their homework? Do they see something nice and go home and Google it or whatever and see where it grows and see what would where do we buy plants nowadays? We buy them a lot through the garden centre chains. Recent examples, garden centres. Camellias the other day, when we were doing our thing, camellias the other day, and they were all Camellia japonica. Japan. Japonica. Now, this is where we come to this thing. We are at latitude 56. Japan is at latitude 36, 46. And that makes a huge difference. Now, they may get cold winters, but they'll also have longer summers. So there's a whole complex that you have to really think about. You guys who are getting involved in teaching other people, and so to be sure of your facts, you should certainly be sure of these sorts of things and not make these mistakes. The camellias that are hardy generally in decent soil and good drainage in Scotland are all hybrid derived from Camellia williamsii. In very select areas in the west, there'll be japonicas that do flower, but that's not for, you know, Easterhouse or wherever in the middle of Falkirk. Or, you know, somebody complaining to me the other day about gardening in Falkirk. Well, the whole of that Central Belt's a bog. Absolute bog from about, let's go, and then going westwards. So you get to Hamilton and Motherwell. It's horrendous soil. Very difficult garden, I'm sorry to be. Leptospermum. I walked into another garden centre and there were big trays of leptospermum. Now, if you don't know this, it's a gorgeous plant. Native of Tasmania. In the book, good on coastal soils with free drainage. That will be fine, yes. Well, we're all right in Atherton, but in the middle of Perth, could be dodgy. Because Tasmania in the south coast is, well, again, what's that? It's between 30 and 45, it's in there. South Australia. We think we could grow it here at 56. Sorry, it's not. Solanum crispum, that wonderful blue potato flowered climber, grows on the walls. It goes like snow off a dike if you put it especially in a garden centre. Folk can't keep their hands on it. It's like the Mars bars in the counter when you're waiting to pay your money. You know, they've got all these nice wee things, and if you're in a station shop, you're interested, you're buying a paper to go on the train and say, interested in any of these, you know, lovely bars of chocolate and stuff like that, impulse buys, and you can't keep your hands off them. They can be expensive. You treat some of these plants like a bar of chocolate. It's an expensive kind of caper because it could be costing you 15 quid. Solana crispum, home country, chill. Latitude 28 in here. You know, who do we think we are? They think we're God, that we can grow these things here. That's not to say that they won't grow with protection in a conservatory or whatever. But there you go. Mail order is the other. And how do they sell mail order stuff? They put glossy pictures in the newspapers. The newspapers don't have any responsibility whatsoever for what's written in that. They take it as gospel. So, a couple of examples. An HTA circular last autumn, that's the Horticultural Trades Association. It's the kind of commercial side of the NFU. It's the commercial side, political side of the retail side of horticulture. Some of you will know about horticulture. 5 trees that you should not be without in your garden in the autumn, or the autumn colour. Well, the first one was Cornus cusensis, which is North American, and it's in here somewhere, you know, and we're up there. Mind you, Cornus cusen does grow in some gardens, and it grows in England, and it grows in Wales. Powys Castle in Wales have wonderful Cornus cusens, but not for heavy, wet soils in the middle of Scotland. The second one was Nyssa, another southern United States tree. The third one was Cercidophyllum. Now that is one that will grow in really sheltered gardens and good gardens and well-drained gardens in Scotland. But there was 3 out of 5 dodgy. But if it's written in a paper and it's coming from the HT, I actually wrote to them and said, if you're producing a leaflet that is being distributed to your customers and newspapers from Land's End to John O'Groats, you have to be a little bit more careful with what you're claiming. Last week, opposite my column in the P&J, Thompson and Morgan were actually selling and publicising Alan Titchmarsh's collection. Now let me put this to you straight away. Alan Titchmarsh probably did nothing at all about it. Because the agencies will do it and they ask them to sign it. And beautiful plants, and right in the middle was a to die for clematis. Clematis armandii. There's 1 or 2 varieties of it. You could grow it round the corner there at Rocky Ferry. Have you got it? No. Clematis armandii, you could grow it. Selected areas with a really nice climate, you could grow it. It's evergreen. It's got a wonderful perfume and it flowers early in the spring. Big clusters of creamy white flowers. Absolutely stunning thing. But not for general circulation amongst all these other things like lupins and bulb in the same advert. There's a lack of responsibility with some of these people. Because I think we do have to look at the latitudes and so on. For example, some of the American stuff does grow okay here. Some of the American trees, I've talked about Cornus, but there's another one called Liquid Amber. And it's a gorgeous tree with an acer-like leaf and stunning autumn colour. But it needs a long growing season to ripen the new growth to stand the winter. Because our winters are nowhere near as severe as central continental winters. But they've had a long summer, the growth has had all the sap taken, the new growth, the sap's out, they're firm, they're hard, and they're ready for it. Not only that, the temperatures don't go up and down, up and down, up and down. The ground is covered in snow, so it's insulated. The temperature stays, and it's not saturated and wet like we are. That's our biggest single enemy, is our variable weather, because after all, this is a coastal maritime climate we have. We're influenced on the one side by the water on the Atlantic, and on the other side by the massive continental Europe. So we will always be subject to changes, short changes, long changes. And the thing that bothers us, and the thing that kills plants, is to be frozen solid 1 minute and fairly dry. Then it all melts. And you get a few days rain and the ground becomes saturated and then it all freezes again. Now that's where marginal plants don't stand a chance. So we've got the day-night balance is quite important. I mean, we need Indian summers if we're going to write some of these things. The fun, to digress just for a minute, I was researching the idea of, because all these new dwarfing rootstocks are being able to grow the patio apricots and the patio nectarines and peaches and things, which are grafted on a very dwarfing rootstock. They're growing in a 10-inch pot, and you can have them out of doors in the summer, but not in the winter. You've got to take them indoors in the winter. And Willie Duncan from Fife, some of you will know who's that. He loves going into the past and the old estates and what they used to do. He sent me some papers recently that he found. And it was about, and I was discussing this with Colin the other day, he was discussing the Murray Coast and the weather of the Murray Coast, and it's said to have medicinal properties for weak people. Almost spa-like properties of the Murray Coast. And he was talking about apricots, and the apricots on the wall at Gordon Castle flowered every year. Flowers in February and March, and fruit picked in July. What did you say to me, Colin, about these apricot trees?
Well, they're still there. Nectarines, apricots, figs.
Yeah.
Magnificent.
Absolutely extraordinary. Microclimate, well drained, on a wall, radiator effect of the wall, keeping the temperatures up and protecting the growth. And that's something you can't give to everything. If you grow in a pot, on a terrace, okay, it's probably got a wall and it's probably got a solid base, and it's probably sheltered. Otherwise you wouldn't have the terrace for that noon if it wasn't sheltered. So it's a possibility, but it does show that it is possible given the right conditions. But for general use, and wherever you happen to be, you have to be careful about the origin of these plants. So temperature and soil moisture, field capacity, then snow and tow, it can provide all sorts of problems. So, is there any guidance? Well, until recently, the Royal Horticultural Society had a 4-stage hardiness chart. They've realised in recent times that that is inadequate, and they have actually just produced a new chart, and it has 7 sections. The fourth chart hardiness was H1, meant if a plant was labelled H1, it required heated greenhouse. H2 requires an unheated greenhouse for all of its time. Hardiness 3, H3 was outside in some regions only for part of the year. That's what we would call half hardy. Half of the year it's inside, half of the year it's outside. And H4, hardy throughout the British Isles. Now, they suddenly realised that the things I've been talking about, the variability of the weather, the variability of the soil moisture, the variability of temperatures and everything else, meant that that was inadequate. So they've come up with a much more defined list, which is helpful for people, especially people who are in the position of passing on information to others. Heated glass house tropical, heated glass house subtropical, heated glass house warm temperate, heated tender cool or frost-free glass, half hardy, hardy average winter, hardy cold winter, hardy very cold winter. So that actually you become a little bit more particular. And in keeping with that, or in company with that, they have also changed the rules and so on for judging their water garden merit. You know, the new plants that come on the scene, they get an AGM, and that gives you, that's it, that's a cracker. Well, they've actually brought some of that to bear on how they judge these new plants that are put up for sale and went to commerce. But these new divisions are fine. The American divisions, and you'll see in some catalogues, and certainly in some, they're on a zone, Z1 to Z10 sort of thing, but it's only temperature, it's only minus temperatures. So you can find things that are hardy to -5, or, which is, I would have thought, was maybe our average lowest winter temperature here, I mean, I'm not talking about the hills or obscure places like Ahoy that get to minus 26 and things like that. But they're were zen. For example, the cordyceps. How many people do you know who lost cordyceps in the winters? Well, it's Z10 in the American thing. It means that it is down to the lowest temperatures. It's supposed to be able to, what is it, go down to 0. And here we are, thinking that we can grow cordyceps outside. Do you know, the leptospermum -7, cross-checking with that, with where it comes from, Tasmania. So it goes on, and despite all the coverage in the press and the radio and television, I feel that the general public are still far